Thank you. Our next speaker is Jonathan Edwards.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jonathan Edewards. I'm here tonight to represent the Downtown Pasadena Neighborhood Association. I first want to thank the staff for their revision of the guiding principle number 1, which previously stated that growth will be targeted to serve community needs and enhance the quality of life. Higher density development, and this is a key phrase, will be directed away from our neighborhoods and into our downtown. Well, that is insinuated that downtown Pasadena was a neighborhood. And I'm happy that it has been corrected and no longer says that, affirming that people live in downtown and that people choose to live in downtown. And the 1994 general plan was to create the opportunity to choose an urban lifestyle. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of an eminent Pasadena.
Neighbors, but in a unique way from our urban lifestyle. This urban lifestyle is the direct result, as you said, Chris, of a plan that the city made nearly 20 years ago in the general plan of 1994. Any objective reading of the general plan is we wanted exactly what seems to be happening to occur, and that is that a dynamic and lively opportunity to choose an urban lifestyle that de-emphasizes the use of an automobile and that emphasizes the use of transit and bicycles and feet walking in the city. It emphasizes the importance of downtown parks. That kind of a lifestyle will be available in the city. It's happening, and I think that the group that has stepped forward deserves congratulations and gratitude for the.
So, what we did in the 1994 general plan was good, and we need to continue doing that, and we need to add additional capacity because we've run out in the Central District. In regards to changes in opinion, just very briefly say, residents in the Central District were underrepresented at the beginning of this process, and it states that in the report. Economic vitality is of equal concern to Pasadena residents, and has become more so, and that's been reflected in change in opinion across the nation, across the city. Thirdly, if you take a look at the city manager's citizen survey, you will see a remarkable change over years in dissatisfaction, a dramatic drop in dissatisfaction over traffic, from 47%, I think, to in the 20%, a 20% drop. And finally, urban revitalization is happening across the nation. If you're reading the LA Times, you're seeing stories about Cyclavia. You're seeing stories about how they've appointed a full-time pedestrian coordinator in their planning department. You'll see stories about streetcars happening in Cincinnati and Portland. Across the nation, this is not isolated. People are seeing that, they're reading that, they're becoming informed, and opinion is changing as a result. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards. Do you have a question? Absolutely.
In the changes we've seen to the general plan that we're looking at tonight, there are projections that increased density in the Central District will increase vehicle traffic, instead of decreasing it.
Well, the increase in density will allow people to walk, to bike, to use public transit to a greater extent than if they could.
I don't know that I understand that, but my point is, if you increase density, you make traffic worse. You don't make it better. Is that correct?
No, that's incorrect. That's not correct.
Okay. What do you base that statement on?
It's modern urban planning thought. It depends on how you're increasing the density.
Okay.
Are you increasing the density in a manner which it becomes easier for people to walk, where it becomes easier for people not to use their car?
Well, the city staff has projected that if we increase the density, we'll get more traffic. And what I'm asking is, can you help us know how to increase the density, as you put it, and reduce the traffic.
The idea is to reach a tipping point in which it becomes, which more people are incentivized to walk, to bike, to use mass transit than they are to drive. And when you reach that tipping point, people will find they no longer need to spend a quarter of their income on a car or auto.
You and I agree on the value of that. How do you do it?
Well, you create that environment, that built environment. You zone for walkability. You use a form-based code to create the kinds of building shapes and setbacks and forms that encourage that, and you allow zoning density that puts people in close range where that becomes possible. You can't expect people to walk everywhere they go if it's zoned at 500 people per acre or 500 people per square mile or whatever. That doesn't make sense. But if you create it so that it's dense enough so that people have destinations to walk to, then they'll do that.
Well, I'd love to see how that works, because I haven't seen it yet.
And when people feel safer on the streets, they'll be encouraged to walk more. And the more people that are doing that are walking, it's a cycle that feeds on itself. That makes it okay. Instead of Colorado Boulevard being a primarily auto-dominated street, not saying that we're going to prohibit autos, but saying, when the sidewalks are full, when that's the majority or the predominant form of activity along that street, then people think, they wake up in the morning and they think, well, instead of driving to, a fifth of a mile to get to my destination, why don't I walk like everyone else?
Now, I understand the principle. I just don't know how, as a planning tool, the city tells us if we do what we're doing, we're going to get more traffic. You want less traffic. I want less traffic, but I don't know how to do that.
I want more pedestrian traffic.
No, I meant auto traffic, but it was right traffic. Pedestrian traffic doesn't make much congestion issue. Thank you.
Did you have a question for Mr.
Please.
Edwards?
What I'm looking at is, from what I understand, are you, by implication, asking us to look at closing streets or looking at the trolley system, or is that what I'm understanding from what you are advocating, or am I correct in that?
The GPNA certainly is 100% behind the streetcar and a trolley system. I would be opposed to closing most streets to auto traffic. Personally, we haven't discussed that. Making things like making sidewalks wider, things like putting in parklets, putting in bike corrals on the street. These are all things that we can do specifically, but it starts with land use.
Because the vitality from what you're talking about, I look back at some of the European cities like Lugano or Tours or whatever, and they have purposefully closed streets and dedicated pedestrian pathways or bike lanes. And from what I'm hearing from you, is that what you're advocating?
I'm not advocating closing streets. I'm advocating because what I didn't say was that what are the things that detract from the pedestrian experience? There are things like vacant storefronts. There are things like parking lots. Parking lot is a dead zone. It's an area of no activity. It's typically, a few nice-looking parking lots. Most of them are kind of ugly. Pedestrians want to feel safe. They want something interesting to look at, to be able to wander by and, I'll go in this shop, for example. And so, the zoning, if our zoning isn't incentivizing those dead zones, changing those dead zones.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, did you have a question for Mr. Edwards?
I understand why, if you're already in the central district, why more density is good. You hopefully haven't even taken your car out at all and you're just walking everywhere. What if you're coming from somewhere else? We're trying to get our sales tax dollars and, spend money, even if they're coming from the burbs, the bedroom part of the city or other communities. How do you get to the central district? You're gonna park, how do you even get there and park? I think there's a strong incentive, because I remember when Old Town first opened, it really became popular and all the kids were going there and it just became so crowded that everybody said, oh, I'll just go have dinner in South Pasadena and spend my evening out dollars there and not be so crowded. If we had a streetcar or trolley system in place, or if that was something we could commit to, I feel like what you're proposing might be different. You really could walk sometimes. Not everybody bicycles. I think bicycling, I don't know how you make bicycling safe. I salute those who do bicycle. But walking, and you could hop on and off a streetcar the way a European city does. But I don't see the push for this density that you're talking about from anyone, or I'd like to know if you see that from anyone outside of those of you who own businesses in the district or who already live there.
A push for density. I think there's a push for, the things that we're advocating for. I don't know that everyone makes the connection between density. But going back to the streetcar, for example, I think those are feedback loops. Again, you need a certain amount of density to be able to support a streetcar system. You look at downtown LA, which is putting a streetcar system there. How are they funding that? They're funding that through an assessment on businesses and on residents. Residents are going to wind up paying about $360 a year to fund the streetcar. Well, if you don't have enough residents, you'll have a harder time funding the streetcar.
Is it being funded just by downtown LA residents?
And businesses, I think they're hoping for a federal grant.
Let me ask you something else. When you refer to a tipping point, and I know that others, or Linda mentioned that word last time. What is the tipping point? Is it where it's so nightmarish to drive that you do walk, or that would be a negative way of looking at tipping point? Could you define what the tipping point is to make it so that it really
the tipping point is when
what do you mean by that term?
The tipping point is when the new normal becomes walking.
Yeah.
When people don't even consider walking today. Larry Wilson wrote an article, and he was talking about, we invited Frank Kent to come into town, and he was staying at the Westin Hotel, and instead of getting off on Del Mar Station, he got off on the Lake Avenue Station. Oops. Well, Walnut, as you know, is a terrible street to walk on. It's not attractive, and it's all auto traffic. It's extremely pedestrian unfriendly. And Larry's point was how many Pasadenans had made that walk before? Very few. And it's not because of people, a generation, 2 generations have grown up where auto is the only way to get around. There's no other thought to any other form of transportation. Well, when it becomes the new normal, when people think that walking is normal, when people enjoy walking, and auto traffic and using an auto is something you do when you have to get across town, or even you look at what's going on in technology with zip cars, people moving away from an ownership society, or maybe you don't have to own a car, or maybe you don't have to own 2 cars. You can rely on something else. You even look, this is really futuristic, but look at what Google's doing in terms of an automatic driverless car. That's not really that far off. And what happens when you have driverless cars is it changes your built environment. You can whistle for a car. When you need it, pull up on your smartphone, the car pulls up in front of you, you get in. Well, what does that mean? That means you don't need to park it.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Did that answer your question, Commissioner Nelson?
I appreciate you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.